have to work the most. But in the end is when you want to work the most because of how much more you're getting for it. So my team wanted me to make this point because they've obviously seen me work and they're like, I don't think this is coming through in this video, which is that I have an obsession with speed. This seems kind of weird in juxtaposition with patience, but this is the very classic micro speed, macro patience, whatever ism you prefer. The idea is though that you want to pull reality forward. And so I always like to break things down, whether it's me or my team, into how many hours and minutes something's going to take. And then I like to stack those things back and forth. And rather than using arbitrary deadlines of, okay, let's get this done by next week, you use actual deadlines based on how long it should take. And then when you find out how long something takes, you then ask the next question, which is, how can I make this take less time? How can I automate this thing? How can I automate portions of this work? How can I give away chunks of this? How can I deem some of this unnecessary? And so that continuous cutting and pulling forward of tasks is how you can move so much faster through life and towards your goals. And so I have this weird mental belief that there's like this big path in front of me that I have all these skills that I have to achieve to hit these milestones. That is laid out on this time span. And so I reject the timeline, but I accept the skills. And so the idea is like, okay, it's like I'm a Pac-Man of like eating those little dots, and each of those dots is a skill. It's like I want to pull it towards me as fast as I can so I can ingest the skills and basically power up myself faster. Because I know that these skills are requisites. I can't move on to calculus without knowing arithmetic. I can't move on to calculus without knowing algebra. There's no way around it. But I can choose to learn algebra faster. And so then it's like, okay, what is required to learn algebra? Oh, and if I do more problems faster than the standard person, then I'll get there faster. And so if the class says, okay, I need you to do these 10 problem sets and they're due next week, well then how long does it take for me to do those problems? Maybe 30 minutes. Then why can't I do my second lesson 30 minutes later and then do another 10 problems and do my third lesson 30 minutes after that and do another 10 problems? Well, if that's the case, then I can do an entire year's worth of work in a week. And this is how, in my opinion, pulling forward is one of those things that I've seen so many of the most successful entrepreneurs do is they simply question timelines aggressively and ruthlessly eliminate any waste or gap between the actions required to win and everything else. Honestly, I think the things that I'm working on right now for my skills are I'm learning how to reinforce cultural norms across a company that continues to scale, which I define as the rules that govern reinforcement in an organization. That is the culture. And those are both spoken and unspoken rules. And when I say rules, I mean when someone does this, they get a pat on the butt. When someone does this, they get chastised or they get a ding, right? And the thing is that people like to say they have a good culture here. But the culture is 100, 1,000 unspoken rules, and that's why it takes people time to learn and figure out what the culture is when they go somewhere new. You can give someone a list of 100 rules, and if you were very granular, you could figure it out. The problem is that the culture changes based on the people who change the reinforcers. And so that means that the culture in a team could be different than the culture in the company because the person who's closest to them manages it differently. And so that changes the behavior. And so that's why a sales team can have a different culture than a marketing team, a different culture than a finance team, a different culture than an HR team. And so I'd say right now, a big focus of mine is trying to standardize the rules that govern reinforcement across an organization that scales and making sure that everyone is aligned with that style of work. The second thing that I'm working on right now is basically the highest level of recruiting. And recruiting and talent is actually kind of like focus, where it's one of those skills that I don't think you ever master. You just keep learning how many more levels there are to it. It's like right when you finish it, you realize that you're at a sub-peak and there's actually another peak beyond it. The mist lifts and then you see the next steps. And so like focus, I thought, oh, I was focused at $100,000 a month because I could turn these opportunities down. And then you got some even sexier opportunities. You got to learn how to say no to those. So the same thing happens with talent is that you're willing to tolerate a certain amount of mediocrity at one level that is no longer tolerable at a level above that. And the types of people that you bring in, you have a higher standard, a higher bar for those people, and attracting them in the process associated with getting them to buy into your culture, your vision, and getting them to take their skills and apply them to your opportunity is a skill set that I am working on now because fundamentally I have a belief which is the best talent is always yet to come. And that's predicated on the idea that if I get better, my opportunity will get better, and that will attract more people and better people. And I bring this up because I basically want to translate one thing, which is that the reinvestment in learning skills never ends. And so Charlie Munger said this, you just have to be a lifelong student. You have to be willing and want to learn. So I actually had an example of this. So recently there was somebody on teams, I did a bunch of one-on-ones over the last week because I was looking at one of the departments. And one of the guys said, hey, I have this particular skill. I was hoping that we could eventually have a role that only does this thing. And I said, you know, it's interesting that you ask or you make that request because if I were you, I would not think that way at all. I would think, how can I learn 10 more skills? Rather than how can the organization meet my demands? It should be, how can I let my skills meet the demands of the existing business? It's asking reality to meet you where you're at, rather than meeting reality where it is. And I think that too many people do this. Why can't the world be more convenient for me? Well, the world is uncaring and doesn't care about you at all. And underpinning that statement is the entitlement, is the expectation that it somehow should. And I think that is a poverty lens. And so the wealthy accept the world for what it is and then choose to maximize and adapt. Everyone else tries to stomp their feet and throw tantrums and say how it's not fair. And they're right. And so what? There's a Haitian proverb that has nothing to do with cats and dogs that I think is relevant right now, which is, behind mountains are more mountains. Goals aren't finish lines, they're mile markers. And I think that's a great mental frame, which is that you think that your goal is to get to $10,000 a month, or $100,000 a month, or $1 million a month, or $10 million a month, whatever your goal is. And I can promise you, having hit those, you just move it again. The mist lifts when you get there and you realize there's another mountaintop. But where people lose their way is when they start listening to people at the bottom of the mountain who see them at the subhead and say, you weren't happy last time when you got to the last peak. Why are you going to be happy the next time? But that's under their assumption in their poverty lens that you did it to get to the mountaintop. You did it for the climb. And they'll never understand that. And don't expect them to. I remember I was trying to understand this person who had made this really irrational decision, and I kept thinking, like, how does this decision make sense? And I was talking to my father, actually. And he said, you're trying to apply logic to someone who's illogical. And that itself is illogical. And I remember thinking about that, is that like, there are these people in our lives that say these things, and you're like, I don't understand why they say that. And then you try and make sense of it. But the effort of trying to make sense of somebody who doesn't make sense is nonsensical. And so if it doesn't make sense to you, ignore it, because they're going to disappear anyways. One of the things that has been true in my life is that the lazy don't know how to start, the losers don't know how to finish, and the legends don't know how to stop. And if I look at that, the lazy, losers, and legends, I know which one I would rather be. And I also say that as somebody who doesn't believe in legacy or anything after we die. So this is tactical. Find what works, do more of what works, find the thing that's preventing you from doing more of what works, solve that thing, and get back to doing more of what works. Then repeat. And so the reality is that in health, marriage, business, or any game worth playing, you don't win by winning. You win by staying alive long enough that you outlast everyone else. So I will give you the advice that I gave a subs group in school that we picked 100 people who had applied out of 500 plus to basically do a 90-day sprint to help them start a school community. So we wanted to do a more in-depth kind of training, things like that for this special group so that we could see if this new implementation yielded better results. And so the guy who we had running the group asked me, he's like, can you give any kind of like words of wisdom to these guys before we kick it off? And so this is what I told them. Number one, follow instructions. Number two, when you read something that you don't understand how to do, Google first. Number three, when you figure it out, post it. Others also may have struggled. 4, actually follow the rule of 100 daily, which is that you reach out to 100 people, you make a post that you spend 100 minutes on, spend $100 plus on ads, and you spend at least 100 minutes a day making and improving ads and researching ads. As long as you do those things consistently and you get better, you will see results. And the amount of you that I see who tag me in like day 4, day 20, day 30, the guys who are at day 60 of rule of 100 are like, I have more business than I can possibly handle. The problem is no one sticks with anything. And this is why I want you to stick with it. Rule number 5, you will be excited for a week. Then excitement will end. And that is where the work begins. 6, your work works on you more than you work on it. You are the product that's getting built more than anything that you're actually putting into your business. Remember that. 7, everything is unscalable in the beginning. That's the point. It's how you learn every piece of it. And once you learn every piece of it, people will call you an expert. 8, the pain of repetition is what forces you to seek improvement. When you figure out ways to get more for what you do, you've gained skill. People want to avoid the pain. One of my favorite bodybuilding coaches, Milo Sarchev, talks about this in the context of how to grow a muscle. He says, find the pain. And then he'll just shout, he'll be like, suffer, suffer. He's like, stay there, find the pain. Because the thing is that pain is what forces you to change. And so if you encounter the pain and then say, oh, it's not working, that's the pain that you need to lean into, because when it's not working is what will force you to do an improvement. And that's how you get good at making better content, get good at making better ads, get good at having more effective reach outs on different channels, whatever. It's that pain that forces you to improve. 9, if you complain, you are dead to me. And I said this because I believe it. Like, there is nothing weaker and more helpless and that has lower agency than someone who simply complains about what has occurred. It's something that happened in the past or is in front of them in the present, and regardless, complaining literally does nothing. It's a net zero. It's a net loss. You both lose the energy that you could have spent improving, and you also lose respect from every single person that you complain to. And they will associate the complaints with you. They won't remember what you complain about, only that you complain. 10, literally thousands of people have already succeeded. You are not special. Repeat the same activities, and you will be able to repeat the same outcomes. Before you make a conclusion that something doesn't work, I want you to state the objective truth of what you're claiming. You're like, Facebook ads don't work. Sure, so the $400 billion a year in advertising that gets spent on Facebook just somehow doesn't work. People aren't doing it because it's not working. Cold outbound doesn't work. Yeah, so the gazillion companies that do 10,000 emails, 10,000 calls a day, it doesn't work. What you have to reframe it as is, I don't know how to make it work. I am not good enough to know how to make it work. Because you're not making as much money as you want because you're not as good as you think you are. 11, write down every reason that you're going to stick with it. Put it in front of you and revisit it when you need a reminder of why to stick with it. 12, business is shockingly simple but surprisingly hard. The hard comes in the form of consistency. The moment you don't want to do it or just skip today is the day you realize what hard actually feels like. Learn to endure, overcome. 13, just win. Because at the end of the day, all of this hardship will be forgotten. It will fade into your memory. And so know that as you're going through it, you're actually just going to disproportionately in your memory remember the good stuff and not the bad stuff. I only have a few glimpses in my memory of the time when I was sleeping on the floor and I had my gym and I was getting started and I remember being so tired that like a good night's sleep couldn't fix it. I remember that. But it's almost like I remember the words that I told myself more than I even remember the experiences because it was so long ago. Things will get better and you will remember the betterness more than you remember the suffering. Because the betterness will carry over into today, which will always be fresher for you than how long ago the suffering may have been. The best time to work on improving your business was last year. The second best time is today. So might as well get started. So if you're a business owner and you'd like to scale, I'd like to invite you out to my headquarters for one of our scaling workshops where we help identify and solve your number one constraint so you can start the year with lots of momentum. So it's 2 days, again, at my headquarters with my team talking about your business. And so if that sounds at all interesting, click the link below, book a call with my team, and if you're fit, we'd love to see you. Most of my success in business has come from finding and exploiting unfair advantages. Here are 15 lessons on finding and leveraging yours. So let's start with number 1. Pain is the price of progress. The fastest growth periods are often the most miserable. If you want to progress, get used to pain. If you think about what actually occurs when you grow, you stretch past your point of comfort. So even if you're growing a muscle, like you stretch, you break it down, it's painful. If you have growing pains, like as a kid, it's like you grew too fast and your joints are in a lot of pain. If you're a company and you expand, this is technically supposed to be good stuff, but it doesn't make it any less painful. Elite athletes don't get stronger during easy workouts. If we want progress, we must accept the price of pain that's attached to it. You cannot both want progress and live an easy life. These two things conflict. Number 2, happy but not satisfied. So let me explain this. So you're allowed to be happy before you hit your goal, just not satisfied. And so there's a very big difference between being content with your life, content with your work, and complacent, meaning you're not going to take any more action. There's this great Haitian proverb, which is, behind mountains are more mountains. It's kind of like, after every peak, you can just see more peaks ahead of you. The work works on you more than you work on it. For me, I remember I had a year that I basically went in retirement trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and the thesis that I came out with was that hard work is the goal. And so the fact that there's something that happens as a result of hard work is really just a secondary effect. It's a consequence. But the goal is the work itself. I had a friend this morning who messaged me, they're like, why do you still work? And I was like, because it's the thing that I enjoy doing most. And when I look back on my life, when I didn't work, I was bored and felt depressed. And when I do work, I am stressed, but I do have moments that I really enjoyed as well. I took this as a kind of a foundational truth for me, not for everyone, that there's misery on both sides, so I might as well be productive and useful. And the only way to be productive and useful is to be happy about the process, but not satisfied, so you can continue to provide value to the world. Now, number 3, ignore critics. Now, this is probably easy to say, hard to do. So let me break this down a little bit more. So, friendly reminder that most people are fat, poor, pansies. Don't listen to them when they try to deter you from doing whatever it takes to succeed. So the average person will always try to keep you average. It makes sense that if you want to be extraordinary, you will do things that an ordinary person would see as extra, right? And so a lot of people, this is the really hard part that I had to come to terms with, is that a lot of people want to see you fail because it justifies the risk that they chose not to take. We always have to think about listening to the people who are closest to our goals, not closest to us. And if you want a more violent version of this, your critics are going to eventually die. And their opinion isn't going to matter then, which means it probably also doesn't matter now. So might as well do what you wanted to do originally. Number 4, selective productivity. Productivity comes from all the things that you choose not to do. I'm going to define 2 more terms for you because I think it's important. I see commitment as the elimination of alternatives. So if I get married, then I eliminate all alternatives to the person that I'm married to, right? That is commitment, right? Which is very similar to focus. Focus, if you think of the hypothetical extreme of focus, is that somebody does literally nothing but one thing. So they don't eat, they don't sleep, they would eventually die. But they would be 100% focused during the time that they were alive, right? Obviously, we have to put a couple things in. You have to eat food, you have to sleep, right? But the most focused person does the fewest things outside of the thing they're focused on. Focus is about the number of things that you say no to. Having this framework is, in my opinion, more powerful for productivity than just about anything else, right? People are always trying to figure out like productivity hacks, but they want to add things to their lives to become more productive, which is completely counter to what focus even means. It's getting rid of everything that's not the thing is how you focus. Now, part of that also means environmentally, right? So if you like have a window that you look outside of, and you've got people who walk past your office, and people can knock on the door, or you've got site notifications, of course you're not focused because all of those things are not the work. So I'm going to give you an analogy here. So imagine there's a wall that you have to get over, all right? In order to, you have to get a critical mass to get above this wall, right? And so you start putting up, these ladders against the wall to try and climb over the wall. All right, this should make some sense. But as you try to build up the little rungs of the ladder, so you put 4 rungs up. Well, you're not going to get the critical mass required to get over the hump to actually get the success you want. But the idea, the fallacy, is that, oh, I'll just do all 3 or 4 of these things and I'll see which one works. When the reality is that any of them work, but none of them will work unless you work on one. And so we have to take these 4 rungs that we're able to build and say, you know what? We're not going to do that. We're going to put that rung here because I'm going to take that time. Then I'm putting for my second opportunity to put it here. I'm going to take this rung and put it right here. And then I'm going to take this rung, and what do you know? I can get over this hump on top, and I can get to the other side of the wall, which of course is where all the money and all the happiness and all the the girls with beautiful hair. Look at this beautiful hair, right? This beautiful. Now she looks like a bug. Anyways, there you go. What's crazy is that this literally happens at all levels of business. Like people who are starting out trying to start 5 things, people who are like their 2nd or 5th year. I talked to a guy last night who has a really good business, really good margins, 50% margins, has great revenue retention, he's in cyber security. People stay with him, people pay, he has no problem getting customers, he has no problem delivering them. I was like, what's the problem? He's like, me. He said, I get bored. He's like, I just want to start more things. And I'm like, yeah, you got to stop that. It's like, the thing is think about how much more successful you'd be. So zoom all the way out. Think of somebody who gets better every single year and works on the same project for 20 years. You'd be like, my God, that guy's probably really fucking good. And what's interesting about this is that it doesn't matter what project the person works on. You do 20 years of reps and you do nothing else, you're going to be good. And so if you know that that's a fact, that's a certainty, that you're going to be good with 20 years of practice, then the objective is to just get 20 years of practice in one thing and stick with it. So like, your plans aren't working because the plans are wrong. The plans aren't working because you're not working on the plan. The hard part about the plan is not creating the plan or even following the plan, it's sticking with the plan. That's the hard part. All right, number 5, fear versus regret. So change is scary, but so is regret. And so the life you live depends on the one you fear most. The more successful version of yourself also has fear. It's that your fear of regret is greater than your fear of rejection. Think about that for a second. I'm going to say it one more time. Your fear of regret must supersede, must be bigger, must be greater than your fear of rejection. And so I remember when I quit my management consulting job, which took me 6 months, so I'm not saying this from a pedestal, it took me 6 months. I decided I wanted to quit, it took me 6 months before I actually quit. By the way, you can measure how powerful someone is by the distance between when they make a decision and when it happens in reality. So if you want to feel impotent, then take as long as you possibly can between when you make a decision and when you act on that decision. Now for me, it was 6 months. And all I did was I called my friends up every night, I was like, I'm gonna quit my job, I'm gonna start a business. And we talk every night, literally every night, and I'd be pacing in my condo like, I'm gonna do it. And I wouldn't do it. I was too afraid. I was too much of a scaredy cat. But the thing that got me over the hump was this. Number 1. I knew that when I looked back on my life, if I never took the jump, I would have been ashamed of myself. And I would have felt like I was a pansy. I was like, I can't die a pansy. I have to be able to make a jump. Number 2, I played out plan B, which is, okay, let's say I actually completely fail. What happens? I was like, well, I'm not really going to be homeless. I know enough people that I can get food, right? I was like, okay. So I'd probably just couch surf. I'd have a little bit of shame. But at the end of the day, what would I really do? Well, I could always apply to get the job that I had back. or I could just go to another place with an experience or a story that would set me up for something cooler later. And so all of a sudden I was like, wait, so my plan B is that I just have a cool experience that I can talk about at a job interview or to go to business school? Okay, that doesn't actually sound that bad. And so there's this huge amorphous fear, but I've just noticed in my life that fear only exists in the vague. It doesn't exist in specific. If you're afraid of something, try and break it into pieces and spell it out. Play out the next 2 or 3 steps. Because all of a sudden, if you're in the developed Western world, the downside risk is not really real. Like, the only real downside risk is the opinions of other people who will say that you failed, who you don't care about anyways. But like, you think you're going to die, but you're not. You're just going to learn some stuff, and you'll be like, oh, maybe next time I'm not going to make that mistake. And that's it. And I say this, and it's easy for me to say, but it took me 6 months to figure this out. But I do remember my final straw was the realization that I had at the time no girlfriend, no kids, and I had no real financial responsibilities besides like eating and having a place to live. I said, if I can't make the decision now because it feels too risky, I will never be able to make the decision. Because if other people rely on me, now some of you are in a position where people do rely on you, and you're like, well, Alex, I've got people who rely on me. Yeah, I would say that it makes it harder. And what now? Harder, and so what? But for me, that was the thing that got me over the hump. It was like, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to have fewer responsibilities. And to play this out a little bit more, if you have people who depend on you, their dependencies on you might increase. And so if you can't do it now, you still might as well do it, right? Because it's only going to go one way. Number 6, persistence creates timing. So you can time everything perfectly if your intention is to never stop. I'm going to say this one more time. You can time everything perfectly if your intention is to never stop. So think about this visually. So let's imagine that this line right here is your lifeline. It's life as time passes, right? Now, let's say that you have some special thing that's going to happen here, and some special opportunity happens here, and some special opportunity happens here. What most people try and do is they don't want to work at all, and then they're like, oh, I'm just going to work here, and then I'm going to work here, and then I'm going to work here. But the likelihood that you're there in these 3 moments is very low if you're trying to time it. But if you work the whole time, then the timing will always be perfect because you will be ready. And so perfect timing is a complete myth, but perfect preparation isn't. And then on a long enough time horizon, your opportunity will come. People think that they need perfect conditions to start when in reality, starting is the perfect condition. It creates the perfect condition for opportunity to be capitalized on. And I can tell you this from firsthand experience with me. Like, the more you do, the more you see you can do. And so opportunities multiply with skill. And so the better you get at doing stuff, the more things you know you would be able to do and win at. And so the goal is to gain as many skills as possible so that you have access to the maximum number of potential opportunities. A lot of people are thinking that, oh, I'm going to wait for the right moment. But when you have unlimited skills, like Elon can go do whatever he wants. He could build a city in the middle of the ocean. And so he could do that. He has the skills because the world of opportunity is open to him. He also spent all of his younger years just developing all these different skills and becoming a polymath across these different things. Independence, political stuff, put it away. The point is the guy's good, all right? And so the goal is to get good, and then you will never have a shortage of opportunities. Number 7, envy versus effort. All right, let me break this down. If people worked for their goals as hard as they envy others for achieving them, they would already have achieved them themselves. So think about the amount of mental effort that goes into the hate that people spew out, the envy for wanting other people's stuff. I'll give you a couple hard truths about this. Number 1, no one is doing as well as you think they are. So by comparison, you're actually better off than you think. Number 2, you don't win by beating people. You win by growing into your potential and then allowing them to shrink into irrelevance by consequence. 3, and guess what? Your biggest threat is not your competition. It's a mediocre version of you that never realized what you could become. And as pithy as that may sound, it's also true, right? A lot of people think it's like, oh, that guy's doing really well. It's like, his doing well changes nothing about your reality. Something really ironic that I noticed is that the people who get copied the most by their competition are the people who ignore the competition who are copying them. Fundamentally, you start by focusing on the customer, and if you always put the customer first, everyone will copy you because you're actually doing the thing that will work, which is focusing on the customer. And there's a lot of weird things in life like that, where like, it's the opposite is what you think. Like, oh, I'm going to look at everyone else. It's like, no, just do what matters most, and then people who don't know how to think will just copy you. The real threat is that no one copies you at all because you're doing nothing. If you take all this effort that you put into comparing yourself to other people, that you look to kind of like tearing them down sometimes, even in your mind, let's be real, maybe don't say to other people, but in your mind you're like, yeah, whatever that feeling is. Just do that towards you not being good enough. And what happens is that when you do that, all of that effort, all that energy goes into improving yourself rather than tearing down somebody else. And only one of those things will help you. Number 8, hard conversations create opportunities. Hard truth. Everything you want is on the other side of a few hard conversations that you have been putting off. People either grow to their potential or they keep living the same 6 months of their life over and over again. And the difference is how many hard conversations you're willing to have and how fast you have them once you realize you need to. You shirk away from this, and I get it. I'm somebody who for a very long time had a hard time having hard conversations. I literally traveled across the country before I told my dad that I left. All right, I get it. So if you think having uncomfortable conversations is hard, just wait until you see the result of not having them. It will be harder. Basically, the struggle is that you have short-term pain versus long-term pain. And long-term pain, I call regret. Comfort is short gain. Regret is long pain. Fear is short pain. Fulfillment is long gain. You want to trade short pains for long gains, not short gains for long pains. It's not the safe bet. It's a guaranteed loss.
Yeah, it's too cold. That's why I didn't go.
All right, so I'm going to spell this out. This is short pain. This is long pain. This is short gain. This is long gain. You want to trade short pain for long gain. That's the goal. It's the best trade. Number 9, endure. There's a reason that when I gave instructions to some of the new business owners who were going to start, putting a community on school, one of the sole instructions I gave them was learn to endure. And so the fastest way to become the person you want to be is to put yourself in a situation where you have no choice but to become them. You'd be amazed at what you can endure when you have no choice. For me, when I signed my lease for my gym, I had $5,000 in my bank account. The rent was $5,000. I had never really made money before. And so I was like, oh wow, how does this work? If I made 100% of the money that I'd made in my job, I would have been able to pay rent and have no food or anything else. But one of my favorite flavor texts on Magic cards is necessity is the mother of invention, right? It's the constraints that create the innovation that is required to get you out of the constraint, to get you out of the hard time. And so when I think back on like human history, sometimes we think the things that we're going through are hard. They're certainly much easier than the things that other humans have endured. And how did they endure them? Well, when the only choice they had was die or endure, you tend to endure. Number 10, results, excuses. This is not going to be a big surprise here. The thing with excuses that's interesting is that they may be valid. And I think that's the part that people struggle with. Is that they're like, yeah, obviously results matter more excuses, but insert special snowflake. The thing is that like you might be right. And I just like this quote from Layla. She says, it's not your fault, but it is still your problem. You still have to do something about it, or you can just wait and say, you know what, I'm going to continue to not live the life that I want until I die, and everyone will be like, oh yeah, he had an excuse. That's why. Right? Is that what you really want? Is that people are like, yeah,
turn it on.
He had an excuse. Like that's it. Like it's a weird thing to want a permission slip for mediocrity, which is fundamentally what excuses are. You just want permission from everyone else to still get respect without the outcome because of your extenuating circumstances. And the thing is there's a ton of allure, but the only person who actually believes that is you. People might not along, the people who love you might say, yeah, you know what, you are special snowflake, your mama might still love you. But like, you're not gonna earn anyone's respect. And I think you certainly won't earn the respect of the person that matters most.
I mean, this guy talks a lot of sense, but like, it's kind of hard to do when he's asking. He's saying like you need to trade pleasure today for pain tomorrow. No, pain.
It's not about doing your best. It's about doing what's
required. He's saying you should take pain today so you can have pleasure later.
So number 11, this one's real, all right? The hard way is the easy way. You're like, how does that?
No, I've not really.
The hard way is the easy way because the easy way
scheme
never gets you there. So think about it. People always are looking for the shortcut, but you have to accept a very simple truth, which is that the shortcut never actually takes you to the place that you're trying to go. And it's because it's rarely one big thing. And I would postulate, fancy word, right, that there are a lot of shortcuts that exist in life. Wait for it, and everyone already uses those. And so whenever an actual shortcut gets found, all humans immediately do it, and it no longer becomes a shortcut. It's just a thing that everyone does, and it's not really a thing anymore. Like we learned how to tie knots. That was a big breakthrough. Then everyone ties their shoes, and they're like, oh my god, let me show you the shortcut to this. It's like, oh, you tie, like, oh my god, everyone does it, and it's like not a thing anymore, right? And so all the things that you want to have that most people don't have shortcuts. But the thing is so many people waste so much time. They literally waste longer than it would have taken the hard way, or the only way, to get there, in search of the easy way that doesn't exist. And so the reality of this is that it's usually 100 small things that make days, weeks, and months hard. It's the never-ending onslaught of shit. And then you remember, after going through that onslaught of shit, that you signed up for this. But then again, you figured that it would be hard. And then you're reminded that this is what hard feels like. And so you keep going, because it's the only choice you have. I want to remind you that a lot of times what we imagine hard to be is different than how we experience hard. Because the nature of hard changes too. And it's more of a limitation in how we describe hardship than it is. And I actually think there's a big problem with this. So it's kind of like Eskimos have like 7 different words for snow. I feel like I should have like 25 different words for hard, right? Like the amount of things that you go through. There's like lifestyle hard. Like, okay, so there's sacrifice hard of like you're giving up things that you enjoy. There's also like effort hard of like starting to do things that you hate doing that you're not good at. There's risk hard of the fact that you could lose something that you currently have, right? That you have the chance of losing what you currently have. You have the uncertainty hard of the fact that you might be doing all of the sacrifice for nothing. There's lots of different flavors of hard, and each one of them presents at different times. And for some reason, when it gets a new kind of hard, it's a new 7th type of snowflake hard, then you're like, oh, this is different. But it's not. It's just that the thing that you grow comfortable with, then you conquer, and then you're exposed to a new level. And so I love this quote from Paul Graham. He said, if you want to make $1 million, you have to endure $1 million worth of pain. Fundamentally, in my opinion, the people who end up building, not inheriting, building tremendous wealth just have massive concentrations of pain. So don't go looking for the easy way because it will never get you there. Number 12, this is a big one, don't give away your power. Now, this sounds very like, girl power or a little like rah-rah, but I will break this down in a little bit less rah-rah way. So what offends you controls you. Whatever you point your finger of blame towards is what also you point your power towards. Meaning, we talked about excuses earlier. I can't do it because insert X. Insert X is the thing that has power over your life. And I remember when I realized this was that I had this belief that I would never be able to be in a long-term committed relationship because my mother had hurt me as a child. I didn't get enough hugs. Who gives a shit? Whatever. But I realized that by using that excuse and by saying it's her fault, I'm broken. It's her fault, I can't trust people. It's her fault, I can't love anybody. And by saying that over and over again, all I did was I said, my mother controls how my love life will go.
To Comic-Con, okay.
Ooh. Heavy. Real. Well, I don't want her to have control over how I choose to love or not love or how content I get in a relationship or anything like that. So I actively had to say, maybe all these things happened, maybe they didn't. Also, who cares? Me. I care. I'm the one who's affected by this. And what's crazy about this, it's kind of a weird thing with like parents, is that you think by hurting yourself, you get back at them for hurting you. And you do hurt them when you hurt yourself. But you hurt you more. At some point, and this is like super real. Let's say that you were parented tough. Whatever that means for you. You had lots of bad things happen. Okay. And it's probably because you were a child trying to deal with the world without the skills of dealing with the world as an adult. But you have these things happen, right? And on some level, you might believe that you becoming successful, you making it work, validates the way that you were parented. And so you have this conflict where you're like, well, I don't want them to think that they did a good job by me being successful. And so then you want to keep not being successful to prove to them and to hurt them for hurting you. And you stay there as long as you want them to control you. And so the day that you choose to control yourself is the day that you choose to divorce your results from the very viable reasons that you have to not win. You are right, and so what? Number 13, rejection versus regret. At some point, everyone needs to choose whether they'd rather risk rejection now or guarantee regret later. And so losers fear rejection, winners fear regret. And most attempts fail of anything. Failure is literally a prerequisite for success. And one of my favorite quotes of mine is greatness rejects all first-time applicants. And so it's kind of like that person that just is like, oh, I can't get a job. And you're like, well, what have you done? They're like, well, I applied somewhere. And you're like, what do you mean? They're like, I applied somewhere. And you're like, and they're like, yeah, and I didn't get the job. They didn't call me. And you're like, you went to one place? And they're like, yeah. This is gonna be a really good analogy for somebody who's listening to this, only for people who don't have a business yet. A lot of starting a business is the number of reach outs that you had to do in order to get the path, the job, the career that you want right now. So think about the amount of interviews, think about the amount of outreach, think about the amount of job ads, think about the amount of resumes that you sent out. Think about all of that. And all of that work got you what I would consider one sale. You got one person to say yes to you, and they would give you money.
Oh, damn.
Right? And obviously within the context of an employee relationship, but fundamentally it actually works the same way. All you do in a business is the same thing. If you can handle that level of rejection, then you can handle the same level of rejection in business. It's not actually that different. The question is whether you can handle that level of regret years later for not doing it. And I'll say this, one of the things that I've noticed between champions and everyone else is that everyone else is so excited when they win. They're so excited, by the idea of them getting first place. But there's a reason that they never get first place. It's because they're excited about it. The people who always and very consistently hit first place and win the championships are relieved because they tend to hate losing more than they love winning. And they expected to win because of the level of preparation they had compared to everyone else. Which brings me very magically to number 14, consistency beats talent. So listen to this. You can beat most people at anything if you just stick with it for a year. You can become competent at just about any skill in 20 hours. It's just that people will wait 10 years to get the first 20 hours locked. Right? Like if you want to learn how to play the first few notes of a guitar, you can learn in about 20 hours. Now, are you going to be Jimi Hendrix? Which Gen Z, who's a guitarist, purple haze, you can look it up. Anyways, the point is that people have this huge delay before they begin. And what makes things hard isn't complexity, it's consistency. And so as boring as it is, you just have to keep doing it before you get anything back. So one of my favorite quotes from myself is, the world belongs to those who can keep doing without seeing the result of their doing. You have to delay how quick you get a reward, how fast you need a cookie in order to keep going. I've been told that I'm decent at presenting and talking on stage in front of people. And what a lot of people don't see is that for years, I spoke with a microphone in front of a group of people, and I did it like multiple times a day, and I did that in the form of a fitness session. And so I had to literally stand on a box and shout around and tell people what they had to do, and I had to do that for years. And I remember when I had to get on stage for the first time, and I had, in high school, been very nervous to public speak. And as I was about to get up on stage, I was like, why am I not nervous about this? Like, this is weird. Like, I should be nervous. Like, why am I not nervous? And I was like, oh, I've done this so many times. Like, so many times. And I'm not talking about, Civil War history and Abraham Lincoln. I'm talking about stuff I know. Outwork your self-doubt through repetition, not affirmations. You don't do it through belief. You do it through stimuli habituation, which is just fancy words for saying you expose yourself to the bad thing so many times they get used to it. It's no longer a bad thing anymore. It's just life. If you want to get over a fear, the way they do it is habituation. So if I wanted to get over, being afraid of spiders, I'm not afraid of spiders, but some people are afraid of spiders, right? If you want to get over that fear, you literally lock yourself in a room with a bunch of spiders, and all you do is you just have panic attack after panic attack, and you pass out, and you wake up again, the spiders are there, you pass out, you keep doing it eventually your nervous system adjusts, and 5 hours later, 8 hours later, you walk out of the room unafraid because you have habituated. And so the point of practice for all of these things is to habituate as fast as you can. And so we're trying to microwave that period of time. And the thing is, let's say it takes this many reps. You can have this many reps take you a year, or you can have it take you a month, depending on how dedicated you are to it. Number 15, have no shame. All right. Now, I have told this before, but my plan B was that I would drive Uber and Stripe. Now, I think part of that was because I wanted to, thumb my, whatever the Shakespearean saying, I bite my thumb at you. Bite my thumb at my very respectable parents and say, like, I would take off my clothes for money. Now, of course, they would be horrified by that. But I think part of the reason I was okay with it was I was like, I'm gonna do it my way. I want to be crystal clear here. If you have no money and you want to make money, you should have no shame. Knock, call, email, text, DM, ask. Life-changing doors do not open themselves. And sometimes I feel like shame was invented by people who have to prevent people who have not from taking action. Because all of this is just an illusion. What are you ashamed of? Trying? Like, let's play it out. Remember I said fear only happens in the abstract, not in the specific. So if you reach out to a stranger, no matter what happens, you always come out better than before because you either have a sale or you have an experience. Both make you better. And so the crazy thing about trying is that it has an asymmetric risk-reward return. So worst case is you get a no and you learn from it. You get better. Life gives you unlimited shots while you're alive. And so if you have nothing, like you're just basically cashing in lottery tickets and saying, oh my God, I lost what you're paying with is time. Fine. Pay more time, get more tickets, keep scratching. So do you know the difference between shame and guilt? Guilt is when you break your own rules. Shame is when you break other people's rules. So if you are gay and you're in a religious community, you would probably feel shame. if you also share that religious community's rule set, you would also feel guilt. If, let's say, you were in a very liberal, progressive environment, you might feel neither shame nor guilt. And so the question is, whose rules are you following? If you have this feeling, this fear of being ashamed, then the question is, who's the one who wrote the rules that you are choosing to follow? And I can promise you, it's not the people who are successful, because they're the ones shouting on the rooftops telling you that it's totally different once you get in the pool. It's very different. It's kind of like the lights of the world turn on, and like you're living in this mirage when you're not succeeding, where there's all this uncertainty, there's all this ambiguity, there's this fog of the unknown in front of you. But as soon as you start taking action, things become very crystal clear. I think there's this, I'm sure some Stoic analogy that said this, but basically, like, if you've ever walked through very dense fog, you can only see a couple steps in front of you. The only thing that you can do in fog is just start walking. And as you walk, more steps become available to you. And so there's this misconception that you're going to be able to see the entire path ahead of you. But it has two fundamental fallacies in front of it. Number one is that you have the right vision to be able to see that far with your current skill set and resources, which you don't. Because imagine today, all of your conditions change. You had more skills, which is hard to imagine because you can't imagine what it's like to have the skill. But maybe let's say you have resources that you didn't have before. Well, that would probably change the way you play the game. So trying to play out and try and play 17 steps in advance when the game itself is going to change and you as a player are going to change. The only thing that you can boil all of this down to is to take the steps that you can see in front of you, one at a time. And I would write this down of like, what are the things that are stopping me? And more specifically, whose voice do I hear? Whose voice or judgment am I afraid of? Because usually it's people, it's society is what we say, but it's usually like two people. And I remember when I had this big decision that I had to make, when I was considering selling Gym Launch, I thought that $46 million was not a lot of money for the business. Now some of you may hear this and be like, oh my God, that's amazing. But believe it or not, before COVID happened, Gym Launch was valued at $150 million. And so for me going from 150 to 50 or 46, it felt small, right? It felt like a really small number. And I remember there was a particular person, we'll call it a friend of me, if you will, that I thought would think that they were better than me if I sold for this small number. And when I was able to narrow it down to just that one person's voice, I thought to myself, am I going to give that person power over my entire life? Which is literally what it was. I was choosing not to make a decision because of someone else. That person has complete power over me. And I was like, well, that's a terrible reason not to do this. And the crazier part is that even if you're right, and that person does say that you suck, so what? Most people don't want you to win. And even if you do win, they will try and do a reverse excuse, which is called a justification, for why you should be excused of the respect that you should earn for having won. He just has good genetics. He has great parents. He inherited his wealth. He had good connections. He was born in America. He speaks English. He's a man. He's white. He's whatever you want. But giving the person justifications in no way helps you. You might be right, and so what? Like, it's so funny. It's like, let's say you have some advantage, whatever it is, right? Whatever advantage you're born with, right? You might have one. It's kind of the same thing as the parent thing. It's like, well, I don't want to be successful because I don't want to prove that I had this advantage. It's like, would you prefer to prove everyone wrong by saying I had this advantage and I also wasted it? I remember, I'll tell you a story, and I think that'll round this off well. So when I was younger, I didn't want to be a doctor, but that was pretty much the path that was laid out in front of me. And so my father's a successful doctor, and I was like, it's cheating, to just assume your practice and just like immediately have a practice that makes a lot of money. And he said, do you think Shaq, when he was 7 feet tall, was like, it wouldn't be fair for me to play basketball. Other people aren't as tall as me. And I always remembered that. He's like, you play the cards you're dealt. These are the cards you have, play them. And I remember thinking that as, now obviously I didn't decide to be a doctor, but the reason that I didn't want to do it was because I thought other people would say that they would disqualify away my success as not earned by me. When the reality is that they're all going to disqualify your success no matter what, because it makes them feel bad. And so fuck them. But if you have some cards, for the love of God, play them. 2026 is going to be an interesting year. Reports just came out that for Black Friday, 95% of purchases were financed. 67% of them were for people who didn't plan on paying it off in the next 30 days, which is a very negative indicator for consumer strength. And everything starts with consumers, and then it bubbles up to B2B. And so if you're a business in general, this will affect you. And so there's good news and bad news. The bad news is businesses that do not change the way they behave when the environment changes get left behind. It's called adapt or die. On the other hand, the good news is that when all the other laggards and the slow to move businesses don't respond, those customers still exist. And so some of the best companies that you've heard of actually grew the most during economic downturns because it's a redistribution of customers and market share during these truncated periods of time. And so it's highly likely that in the next 18 months, 12 months, 6 months even, there could be a softening of demand. And so if your business is set up so that you have more reliable lead gen from multiple sources and a team that's in place that can actually continue to run the business and potentially continue to increase your margins because of AI, because of automation, then your business can be one of the winners. So if that's not in place in your business and you'd like it to be, I'd love to invite you out to 2 days here in Vegas with my team to a scaling workshop. We walk you through the things that we're doing at acquisition.com in our portfolio companies to help them scale in 2026. So if that sounds interesting, click book call. Love to have you out here. Before I had my $46 million exit, I went completely broke twice. Starting from zero multiple times taught me what actually matters. And so here's everything I learned. I hit $100 million in net worth at age 31, but before that, I lost all my money twice. And the difference between me losing all my money the first 2 times and now are these rules. So this is no BS advice for making money and keeping it. Number 1, passive income is a lie. If you think about how money is made, you make money during time because every minute we're alive, a minute passes, time passes, and we make money over that time period, which means every single person on planet Earth has $1 per hour that they make. And so it's not that passive income doesn't exist, just as much as active income doesn't exist. It's a spectrum where it's how active is it, or how passive is the activity that I'm doing relative to the time that I'm investing. And so I would eliminate active versus passive and simply say, what is my return on time, or how much do I make per hour? It's just that most people get really scared of that, because like, no one should trade their hours for money. Everyone trades their hours for money. It's just that when they receive the money, it's just not denoted in hours. And so I think there's two downstream impacts in terms of changing your behavior around this that I had to apply. Number one is that I was obsessed with trying to find quick, easy, low, effort money things. And so I ended up spending tons of money on things that I was obsessed with, hoping would cost me no time to make, and I would put not nearly enough time to the things I was actively making money with, and thinking, how could I just make my active income significantly higher? And I would get obsessed with the idea that everything I did actively had to be scalable, or it wasn't worth it. Because if it's not scalable, then why should I bother? I shouldn't trade my time for money. But if I looked at what I was making over the last year and divided it by the amount of money I made per hour, this activity was 15 times what I was averaging per hour. So I should absolutely do as many hours of that until all of my hours are that, and then I should find something else I can trade my time for that's even higher. And so if you want a very humbling experience, look at how much you made last year, and then divide it by 2,000 if you want to know how much you made just in a 40-hour work week. Now, if you want to look at how much you made per actual hour of being alive, you can divide it by around 8,000. Or just take that number and divide it by 4. And that's actually how much you make per hour. And so when you're looking at, is this worth my time? If it's more than that number, it probably is. And so what I should have done, and what changed for me, was that I stopped trying to invest my money from my active into trying to find more passive things, and try to say, how do I invest my money more into my active to multiply my active that I know is working? Number two, if you can't buy it twice, don't buy it once. Or even buy it 3 times, or 4 times, or 5 times over, don't buy it once. And the way that really shifted how I started spending money, or rather started saving money and not spending money, was when I started looking at how much time it took me to make the amount of money post-tax to buy whatever I wanted. And I remember this clear as day. I was working at Smoothie King as a blender tender, and I was making $6.75 an hour, and I had just gotten a raise from $6.25 an hour. I'm dating myself. Anyways, and while I was there, the coworkers that I had, and I would always go to lunch next door at Kosi, which was like a sandwich shop. And it was like $13 for a sandwich, right? And a drink and chips and whatever, right? And so I remember looking at my check, and my $6.75 an hour after taxes and fees was like $6 an hour. And I was like, man, I gave up 2 hours of my 6-hour shift every shift to go buy lunch. And I was like, I'm literally giving a third of my earning away for lunch every single day. If I knew that I had to work the first 2 hours just to get the sandwich, I don't think I'd ever make that trade. And yet I was making it every day. And then I started thinking, I'd go to the mall and be like, oh, do you want a new shirt? And it was at the Gap, and it was $30. And I was like, okay, well shoot, that's a whole shift. And I was like, would I work a whole shift if someone just held up a shirt that I didn't need to do it? And I was like, I don't think I would. And so all of a sudden it started shifting how my buying happened, because I started feeling the pain associated with what it would take if I had to do that before getting the thing I was going to buy. And it completely changed my buying behavior. And to be very clear, saving money won't make you money, but saving money allows you to have money, and having money allows you to look further out. And when you look further out, you can take on bigger risks, which absolutely will make you more money. And when you're looking at the price of whatever the thing you're trying to buy is, obviously when I was a teenager looking at a shirt, I was looking at, okay, I'm making $6 an hour, a shirt's $30. But when you're an adult and you're making $100 an hour and you're looking at a $500 or $1,000 purchase, would you work 2 days in order to do that? I don't know, would I? Probably not. And sometimes you think, hey, would I work all day for 2 days to go out with the boys for 3 hours on Saturday? I'd probably be like, guys, I'm not gonna work for 2 days just to go have 3 hours of fun, right? That feel like I'd rather just not work the 2 days. And that was the thing, is whenever I had I'd rather just not work than do that thing, then I was like, I shouldn't buy that thing. For example, when I was poor, I only spent cash. And so my easiest way of actually creating a budget was that I had a personal training client who paid me $2,000 a month in cash. And so 100% of my money that came in through the business and credit cards and everything else is just what went into my bank account. And the only thing I knew I could live on was inside of my wallet. And so as that got replenished, and the thing is that I'm so scared with money, or I was so frugal with money, that I would always make sure that I had more than that to make it for the next payment, because sometimes the guy would take a day or two. You pay on Wednesday rather than a Monday or whatever, and I need to make sure that I have food for Chipotle. 3, most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year, and they underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. And every new employee that I have that walks into acquisition.com, the number one thing that they say they want is growth. And I have this talk with them, which is the 10-year $1 million contract. But it's less about the $1 million and more about take whatever your net worth is now and add a 0 to it, or add 2 zeros to it. You can accomplish that in a decade. If you look at the biggest companies in the entire world who were worth multiple billions from their inception until the time they were worth multiple billions, many times it's under 10 years, but it's still more than 5, more than 7. And so you can accomplish life-changing, crazy amounts of wealth in a decade. And so if you could write a contract to yourself and say, I will make no money for 10 years, but on the 10th year, I will add a 0 or 2 zeros or 3 zeros to my net worth, would you do it? And if the answer is yes, which it almost invariably is with every person who comes into my business, then I say, great, now act like it. And so if you knew that you would make this amount of money over that period of time, you would stop this obsession, myself included. This is me giving my advice to myself who lost it twice. When I was able to shift to, okay, what would I have to do that would make it unreasonable that I don't 10x in 10 years? Then all of a sudden I started making very reasonable bets that I knew would compound unto itself over that period of time. And then winning became inevitable rather than a game of chance. And so oftentimes you have potential earning and then actualized earning. And usually as you're realizing the potential earning you have, you're usually losing out on your investing into that potential, right? You're realizing the potential. And that's kind of like the kid that learns one skill and then immediately says, I'm gonna start a business opportunity around this one skill that makes me $5,000 a month. Or they have this one skill and say, hey, this company is willing to pay me $100,000 a year to go do this skill, where I have this other company that'll give me a free internship where I could 10x my potential earning in 3 years, but I'm gonna make $35,000 a year for the 3 years. Which one would you take? The problem is most people will take the $100,000 now and forego the investment in self. And that's the thing, is we are the asset that we invest in, and the currency we invest into ourselves in is time, experience, and skills, right? Skill is the outcome. The time and the effort is what we put into it to gain the experiences, which ultimately give us the skills. But if you're in an environment where you're not compounding your potential earning, then you're actually losing out long term. You're ripping up your $1 million or your 10x or 100x contract for a decade from now so you can get the short, fast money today. And that's why in the early days when you have limited amounts of money but lots of time and energy, instead of putting your money in the S&P 500, I like to say put it in the SME 500. Because the asset that is you will always beat the stock market. Number 4, you should only have to get rich once. In other words, don't bet what you have and need for something you don't have and don't need. And some of the gravest mistakes I made manifested in, for example, me getting into a partnership that I shouldn't have gotten into because I wanted even more faster. Now, when you get into a partnership, which is usually the time where you put the most risk on the table, one is you guarantee the largest decrease in your earning power. You pay with the most expensive thing you have, which is equity, to somebody else. And so people get obsessive about what they're 5%, 10% later when we're making money. But day one, they're like, all right, we cut the pie in half. Oh, we cut the pie into thirds. Right up front, before anything's really happened. If you work with a partner or decide to partner up with somebody, one of your friends, one of your coworkers, this is coming from somebody who has 9 failed partnerships before I met Layla, and then that has now worked, and now I have successful partnerships. A partner needs to have one of these 3 things that you do not have. They either have to have money that you don't have, and then the clear contribution is that money. They need to have experience you don't have, and the clear contribution is that experience. Or number 3, they have time and energy that you don't have, and the clear contribution is that time and energy. And so I added that second part on, is that just because someone has experience, if they're not contributing it to the partnership clearly, then you're still not going to get the benefit from it. If they have the time and the energy, but it's not clearly defined how they're going to invest that time and energy into the things you both get in return, then it's not going to be a good partnership. And I've lost so much money in partnerships, especially early on. One of my 2 big losses was from a partner. And a big part of it was I was insecure, and I thought I just had to have somebody else because I was afraid to do it on my own. If you are a business owner and you're trying to scale and you're doing $1 million a year and you want to go bigger, go to acquisition.com, hit scale, and we'd love to see if we can help you out at one of the workshops we run here in Vegas. Which brings me to number 5. If you never learn to manage your time, you're never going to learn to manage your money. And so the thing is that all of us obviously have equal amounts of time that we're given, not necessarily in life, but at least every day. And so the people who get the best returns on their money are the ones who learn how to best invest their time. And so a big misconception around money is that money, in my opinion, is an encapsulated version of time. And since all of us trade time for the money that we get, then it means for each person, money represents a certain amount of time. And the wealthier you get, it's just that the denomination of money represents less time for you. And so for someone else, $100 may represent 4 hours. For a wealthier person, $100 may represent 4 minutes. And so it's a constant appraisal that you do on a regular basis, looking on your calendar and saying, what things do I have here that I could trade my time for more money? And so again, this video is about making money overall. I'm not saying that you can't spend time with your girl, but there is a transaction cost for that time. And as long as you're willing to make the trade, then trade it all day. But the bad trades are the one that when you actually think about it in terms of what it costs, you'd say I wouldn't do the trade. That's a bad deal. And so over time, if you continue to trade up how much time you invest for what it makes you, you will always make more in your income year after year after year. Number 6. Check your bank account before you check social media first thing in the morning. And if it hurts you to check your bank account first thing, then you need to do it even more. Because for me, I started not knowing where my money was going. And so I had a friend who was like, dude, just look. And I honestly had anxiety looking at my bank account, looking at what money was going out and all that kind of stuff. And so I started making that habit and I had to confront it. But the crazy thing is as I started looking at my money, as I started paying attention to my money started paying attention to me and hanging around. And so Peter Drucker said, what gets measured gets managed. And so one of the most fascinating things that I found with human behavior in any kind of change is that the first thing that you can do to improve any metric for any skill is to actually measure it. And so if you want to lose weight, if you weigh yourself every day, no matter how painful the number is, that intervention alone helps people lose weight. You don't even have to talk about diet. You don't have to tell someone to exercise. If they look at the scale every day, they become aware of it, and when you become aware of a problem, you start consciously or subconsciously making moves to change it. You have that hesitation before you put that food in your mouth. You have that hesitation before you take your wallet out when you're looking at your bank account every day. It doesn't matter what it is, whatever you're trying to improve, but look at it, confront reality, and then reality will start to improve. And if you're curious, how long do you still check your bank account every day? And the honest truth is, I stopped checking when we had about 20 million bucks. And so that started when I had in the hundreds to $1,000 and continue to check every day. And when I stopped checking it was when I realized my daily fluctuations in market movements and things like that across my assets. I basically wasn't able to really see it on a daily basis. So I had to start extending my time horizon for when I would check it. So it'd be monthly or quarterly that I started checking it. Because that way at least I know I should have some movement upwards. And that is something that if you've done checking your bank account every single day for years, you start to already have developed some of those disciplined skills, which then you can delay gratification of having saved money for a day to having saved money for a quarter. Number 7, Learn how to make money before you start trying to learn how to make money, make money. So I see so many guys, especially young guys, who are like, I've got $1,000. How do I invest the $1,000? They're trying to figure out a way to get that $1,000 to compound. They put it into a compounding calculator and they're like, man, if I get 50% returns for the next 4 years, I'm gonna be a billionaire. But the thing is that one, it's most likely that you're gonna buy a fucking Dogecoin and then it's gonna tank and then you're just gonna lose your $1,000 and be like, wow, think about this. I just worked for 2 weeks or 1 month to save that $1,000 and I lost it in seconds. So alternatively, if you take that $1,000 and you put it into how do I make more money, how do